just said thank you all for coming out and celebrating Daddy's life with us. I just wanted to I know that a lot of you know him, but I know that a lot of you don't know him as well as we do. So I just wanted to kind of share a little bit about who he was um, and how much he's impacted everybody that he comes into contact with. Daddy was born on February 20th in 1956 in Staunton, Illinois. He was the 12th of 15 children, so he knew how to, handle himself. His mother, Dorothy, was a homemaker, and his father was a carpenter, so they moved wherever the jobs were. His father sometimes kept questionable company, and he had some shady involvement with the mafia. We're not quite sure how deep that's rooted in the family, but it affected the way that he was brought up for sure. On the wedding night of his parents, his father was arrested. Some say it was for passing counterfeit bills. Some say they don't know, but they all agree that it was something to do with his dealings with the mafia. So on his wedding night, he was arrested and served 18 months in prison. So happy honeymoon. So that's kind of where he sprouted from. 4 years after he was born, his dad decided, after Dad was born, his father decided to move him from Illinois to Colorado. So throughout his childhood, he was in Colorado Springs and Leadville back and forth throughout his childhood. As one of 15, he came from a very humble life, but they all loved life. They had a great life, that, especially for that time frame of 15 kiddos. They were very lucky. But his dad's dealings with his shady characters sometimes made it kind of anxious. At a moment's notice, his dad would come home and tell his mom, we got to be out of here in an hour. Pack up everything, let's go. And they'd have to pack up what they had and leave. And I think that's part of why our dad was such a nomad. He did not like to stay in one place for a very long time. So we moved a lot growing up. And I think that's just because that's how he was comfortable. And I enjoyed it. I loved it. It teaches you how to be, you have to learn how to be around people. You have to learn how to adjust, and I thought it was a good thing. Let's see. So actually, yes. So in my parents' marriage, they were married for 50 years on earth and for eternity now. In the 50 years of marriage, my parents moved 75 times. True story. So if you guys ever need help moving, you know who to call because we're pretty good at it. Dad was always very smart. He absorbed knowledge like a sponge absorbs water. He absolutely loved to learn. He had a thirst for it. He did not feel the same way about school, however. He was not a fan of school, so he went to high school for part of his freshman year. He stayed long enough to build a pool table and shop, and then moved on to other things. But his knowledge, his thirst for knowledge didn't stop when he left school. He's always been that way. He knows so many random things about just tons of facts that you just couldn't imagine. That's just because that's the way his mind works. Let's see. In March of 1974, Daddy lived in Leadville, and his friend Rusty and Rock were going to head to Durango and asked Dad if he wanted to go. So he said, sure. So they drove to Durango, and it ended up at the science building of Durango High School, where this super groovy chick walked out of the building, and Dad saw her for the first time ever, and his friend Rusty yelled, "Hey, Mom!" And Mom turns around, big smile on her face, throws her books up in the air, and runs to the car. And Daddy said he knew at that moment that that was going to be his wife. And he said, I just had to convince her. He did, obviously. Within that same year, they were married. And then in 1975, February, Daddy enlisted in the United States military, where he served for 6 years before being honorably discharged in 1981. Just before he left for boot camp, my mother's grandfather, Charles Sipe, gifted a copy of the Book of Mormon to my father with a challenge to read it and pray about the truthfulness. Daddy told me that at the time he felt like something was missing in his life, he just didn't know what it was. So because he felt this, he accepted the gift and the challenge. He kissed Mom goodbye in Durango and headed to Colorado Springs to stay with his mom for a few days until he had to ship out to boot camp. For the 2 days that he stayed with his mom, he had a lot on his mind and was thinking a lot about things. So the last night he was there, he went into the kitchen when everybody else was asleep. And he knelt down and he asked his Heavenly Father, he told him, I've already read so many books and so many gospels from other churches and faiths, and he said, I do not want to waste more time. So he said, please tell me if this book is true before I waste more time reading another book. Daddy said at that very moment, he felt hands on his shoulders, and he felt the Spirit through his entire body, testifying to him that that book was true. Daddy said that if the book was true, then the gospel had to be true. The church had to be true. So he went on to boot camp with his Book of Mormon. He took all but one of the missionary discussions during boot camp, took his last one when he got home from boot camp, and was baptized in June of 1975. For the first 3 years of the service, Daddy was a truck driver for the Marines, until a wonderful stake president who took Daddy under his wing told him that he didn't feel like truck duty was the best thing for him and his family. He suggested that he change his MOS to computer programming. Daddy took his advice, but got tired of waiting for the military to get him into the classes he needed, so he started grabbing all the technical manuals he could find. All the technical manuals, anything that had to do with computer programming, and he taught himself how to do it. Because of this inspired change, Daddy was able to provide a very wonderful life for his family throughout the years. In 1976, just before Daddy went overseas to the Philippines, he and Mom were still in the Los Angeles temple for time and all eternity. Once he returned from overseas a year later, he, Mom, and their first 3 kids lived on the base of Camp Pendleton until he was discharged in 1981 when they moved to Orange County, California, where Daddy worked for Ross Perot for a spell. He and Mom added their 4th and most important child to the family. That's me. And then 18-ish months later, Daddy worked himself out of a job at Fedco, so he packed up the growing family and moved from California back to Durango, then Ordway, then Leadville. He told me once that out of all the jobs he's ever had, one of his favorite ones was when he lived in Ordway and worked on a watermelon farm. He worked there with his brother Harry, and he said, if you ever want to taste the best watermelon ever, he said it's in the very morning on a farm, where it's still on the vine and the dew is still running off of it. He said, you pick one of those up and slice it open, you'll never taste anything better. Over the next many years, Daddy had several computer programming contracts taking us all over. Ogden, Utah, Aurora, Colorado, Montbello, Colorado, Phoenix, Arizona, Whitefield, Colorado, Fountain, Colorado, Peyton, Colorado, Schenectady, New York, Highland Falls, New York, back to Durango, and then he finally, his last time was in Arvada. Throughout all this, the family continued to grow from 4 to 8 kids, and during many challenges, heartaches, highs and lows, sadness, happiness, love and sorrow. But Daddy loved life. And while he loved computer programming because it provided a good life, after a while he didn't enjoy it a whole lot because you're sitting at a desk from 9 to 5 and you can't really, do a whole lot with it. When he was working for WorldCom, a CEO and a bunch of the higher-ups got caught embezzling money, and because of that, all the contractors got fired because they couldn't afford to pay them, and the company, I think it ended up going under. And so Daddy was laid off, and he didn't have a job for 14 months, a contracting job for 14 months. So he had to try to figure out a way to supplement his income and get out of the house before Mom killed him. Mama always said she loves Dad, but there's a reason that men go to work, because you cannot be together for that much time. And so he convinced Mom to let him buy this old truck, and he became a junker, or a hauler. And he loved that job. He loved that it wasn't behind a desk. He loved that he got to move around and meet people every day, because that's his forte. He loves people. He loves life. Though he was only making a pittance compared to what he made as a programmer, he was so much happier doing it. Daddy had a knack for making the best of any situation. In your program, I don't have one right now, but in your program is Daddy's favorite quote. And I cannot remember what it is exactly, so Keisha's going to help me here. Mind the whole, I'm serious, one of us going to go with it. I know. It's Russell and Nelson. The joy we feel has little to do with circumstances of our lives and everything to do with the focus of our lives. Daddy lived and breathed that motto. He made the best of every circumstance. He was always trying to find the light at the end of the tunnel, and he taught us how to do it too. And even though sometimes life gets hard and you forget, you always hear that voice in the back of your head you can fall back on, and just remember that it can be good if you just change your attitude and remember to be faithful. Daddy loved everything. He had so many passions. He loved to draw and paint. He was so good at it. He loved to dance. And because he loved to dance, he brought us into that growing up. And we had dance parties all the time at home. He loved to cook. When Mom was out of town, we talked about this, Daddy could cook. But when Mom was home, somehow he didn't know how to cook. But once a year, Mom would go visit her mom for a week, and Daddy would cook us up some amazing food. He was awesome at it. He loved to make home videos. Many of our home videos, Daddy got pneumonia really bad one year when we lived in Montbello. And he was out of work for 6 months because the pneumonia was so bad. And he got bored at the house sitting around, so he bought a camcorder, started videotaping everything. And he loved it. He loved it. But that's where most of our videos came from, and so I'm grateful that he did it. Daddy used to make skits up. He wrote plays with us when he was in the Boy Scouts. They loved it because he always came up with these amazing skits and these amazing things to do. But one of the things he was most pleased with, one of his accomplishments, was a book that he wrote. He wrote it in the early 90s and then published it later. And it's called The Armies of Helaman. And it is super fictional, but it's about a Mormon mafia. I think he was channeling his dad when he was writing that book. But that book was hilarious and became kind of a standing joke in our family, because in chapter 7, one of his daughter's boyfriends meets a very sad demise. So we always tease it whenever one of our boyfriends was acting up. Daddy would say, "Do I need to have them read chapter 7? So that became a fun joke for us. He owned guitars and played them constantly. We would flop down in his lap and strum the guitar strings while he would play the notes. He taught our kids how to play. He was so full of life, so much so that everybody around him could feel it. He literally lit up a room when he walked into it with his personality and his joy. He was everyone's favorite fill in the blank. Uncle, neighbor, person. I could go on for so long about all the things that are wonderful about Dad. But you'd be here for a really long time, we won't get. Daddy's top passion in his life, out of all the things that he loved, always his number one was his wife. Our mother, Aunt Linda, she was his whole world, and everybody knew it. There was no doubt. He lived and breathed for our mother. When Daddy got the news about his cancer. My husband and I went to see him in the hospital. And when I walked into the hospital room, Mom was in the back because she was on the phone. Lots of family members were texting and calling, trying to find out what they could do to comfort Mom and Dad because they had just gotten this horrid news. And as I walked into the room, Daddy put his arm out and said, "Chev, come here." So I took his hand and he pulled me in and he said, "Chev, you have to take care of your mother." He said, "Let her have a service." And that was huge because Daddy didn't want a service. He thinks they're silly. But he knew Mom wanted one. And so he said, "Let Mom have a service." He said, "Let her be sad." And he said, "But then don't let her dwell. Help her move on." He said, "She'll carry it out for 6 months if you let her, so don't let her." I said, "Okay." But after getting this news, the first thing on his mind wasn't, what am I going to do? Wasn't fear for him. It was his wife. It was our mother. Less than a week after less than a week as we were helping Mom and Dad pack up their home in Durango to come live with me in Arvada, Daddy called all of the kids into the room. He told us very matter-of-factly that he was not afraid. He said, "I know where I'm going and I'm ready to meet my Heavenly Father." I can't forget the look on his face when he said it. It was so peaceful and so genuine. He said that he has nothing to fear, but that he needed us to promise him that we would take care of our mother. His wife, his world. We assured him that we would most definitely take care of her. And with hours of the conversation, within hours, he was no longer able to communicate regularly. And just short of a week later, he was gone. Daddy was a very blessed man. If he were here right now, he would tell you the same. And he'd give a lot of examples as to why he was so blessed. So I'm going to share just a few. Woo! Maybe. Daddy died a worthy temple member, a worthy temple recommend holder, a worthy priesthood holder, a worthy son of God. He died with all 8 of his children, several of his grandchildren, and most importantly, his beautiful wife with him. His suffering was short-lived. He was able to personally baptize, bless, and or confirm all of his children, many of his grandchildren. He officiated one of his daughters, my beautiful daughter Aspen's wedding last October. He taught that same granddaughter how to drive because I was not ready. She's a little nuts. She drives like her grandma. He held multiple callings in the church, most of which were some form of teaching. Boy Scout, primary, gospel doctrine, the elders call him high priest, temple worker, and he devoted so much of his time to genealogy. He not only had a ton of passion and interest in it, but he got others excited about it too. When we were packing up in Durango, Kira and some of us, I don't remember who else in the room, I apologize, we came across Daddy's patriarchal blessing, and we asked for permission to read it. And in his patriarchal blessing, it was amazing. To see how Daddy's life mirrored it. Every single thing in that patriarchal blessing became very, very factual in Daddy's life. Daddy, Tom, Uncle Tommy, he was an amazing man, a true man of God. And he was quite literally my favorite person in the whole world. I'm grateful for the knowledge that we'll see each other again. And And I testify that that is true. And I say these things in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.